Daniel chapter 12, the finality of hope, the courage of the end time witness. When the world feels like it's unraveling, Daniel 12 stands as an ultimate anchor for the soul. It moves us beyond the paralyzing fear of chaos and into the serene confidence of God's sovereign plan.
This is not a chapter of despair, but a call to courageous brilliance. A reminder that for those who stay faithful to the light,
the darkest of times are simply the prelude to the glorious eternal reward.
The end of history isn't a chaotic accident. It is the final act of God's redemptive drama.
The resurrection assures that death does not have the final word. The sealing of the prophecy reminds us that God's timing is perfect even when we do not fully understand. Prepare to be strengthened, for in these final words, we discover that history is not spiraling out of control but moving steadily towards the triumph of the eternal King. The time of distress and the promise of deliverance. Verse 1. At that time, Michael the great prince who protects your people will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is written in the book, will be delivered. This verse marks the beginning of the time of the end. Michael the great prince, who serves as a spiritual guardian over Israel, arises to act on behalf of God's people. The time of distress refers to a final, unprecedented period of global tribulation described as worse than anything from the beginning of nations until then. During this period, Michael protects God's people. Everyone whose name is found written in the book will be delivered. This event parallels the great tribulation mentioned by Jesus in Matthew 24:21. The book refers to the book of life, emphasizing that not worldly security but salvation is the only true refuge when the world collapses. Despite the unprecedented chaos, those whose names are written in the book are guaranteed deliverance. This verse reminds us that God's security is not based on our status or achievements, but on our inclusion in the registry of the redeemed. The resurrection of the dead. Verse 2. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. This great awakening to life for some and to shame for others is one of the clearest Old Testament prophecies regarding the physical resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. It shifts the focus from earthly survival to eternal destiny, dispelling the notion that death is the end. The prophecy reveals that the physical body, though returning to the dust, will be brought back to life by the power of God. This hope is affirmed through the Old Testament. Job declares, "And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God." Job chapter 19 verses 25 to 27. And Isaiah proclaims, "Your dead will live, Lord, their bodies will rise." Isaiah 26:19. This resurrection is twofold. It's a moment of eternal vindication for the righteous and a moment of eternal condemnation for the wicked. The eternal radiance of the wise. Verse 3. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Daniel reveals that true wisdom is not worldly intelligence or success, but a sacred act of leading others towards God's righteousness. The wise are those who understand God's truth, live it boldly, and refuse to compromise with the darkness. Their reward is nothing less than the brilliance that shines like the heavens and glows like the stars forever. This promise is echoed by Jesus in Matthew 13:43. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Together, these verses imply that evangelism, that is, leading others to righteousness, is an eternal investment that yields celestial rewards. Every person you encourage, every soul you point toward righteousness, becomes part of your shining testimony in God's presence. The sealing of the prophecy. Verse 4. But you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. God instructs Daniel to seal the scroll, meaning that the full understanding of these mysteries would remain inaccessible until the appointed time, not hidden forever, but reserved for the time of the end, when events would unfold with clarity. The phrase, "many will go here and there to increase knowledge," carries a dual meaning. Literally, it points to an age of rapid travel, global exploration, and explosive information growth, mirroring our modern world. Spiritually, it suggests a frantic search for meaning and truth during the final days of distress, when many will run to and fro, yet find no lasting peace. The mystery of the timing, verses 5 to 7. The witness of two, establishing divine truth, verse 5. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. In the legal framework of the Old Testament, the testimony of two or three witnesses was required to establish a matter as truth. Deuteronomy 19:15. By placing one angelic figure on each side of the river Tigris, the scene serves as a formal heavenly court proceeding. The arrangement emphasizes that the profound and terrifying information Daniel is about to receive regarding the end times is not merely a vision but a verified divine decree. It assures Daniel and the reader that the events unfolding are backed by the absolute authority and consensus of the heavenly realm. The question of the duration, verse 6. One of them said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" This verse captures the bridge between human anxiety and divine revelation. The angels, acting as observers of the unfolding drama, ask the critical question that has echoed through the hearts of God's people throughout history. How long? By asking this of the man clothed in linen, a figure representing the voice of the Almighty or the pre-incarnate manifestation of Christ, they highlight that even the heavenly beings acknowledge these events are governed by a specific divine timeline that leads to a final resolution. Despite their sinless state, they are not omniscient and desire to understand the great future events that will radically impact the present world. The solemn oath of eternity, verse 7. The man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven. And I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, "It will be for a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." In the ancient world, lifting one hand was the standard posture for taking an oath. However, the figure of supreme authority in linen lifts both hands to heaven. This signifies an oath of absolute finality. By raising both hands, the being invokes the entirety of heavens as a witness, indicating that there is no higher authority to appeal to. This signifies the highest degree of assurance one could provide. He is in effect binding the future of human history to the immovable decree of God. The being swears by him who lives forever, anchoring the prophecy in the unchanging nature of the divine. The prophecy is framed as a settled fact because it is held within the hands of the one who exists outside the time. It transforms the message from a terrifying prediction into a promise of divine control over history. The phrase, "a time, times, and half a time," represents 3.5 years. This 3.5 period of intense trial and limited duration symbolizes the zenith of human opposition against God. By swearing by him who lives forever, the angel confirms that even the most intense suffering has a divinely ordained beginning and a definitive end. The Bible notes that this occurs when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered. In the theological sense, this points to the moment when human self-reliance is utterly exhausted, forcing the people of God to depend entirely on His strength rather than their own. The oath concludes with a sobering but hopeful promise. All these things will be completed. The chaos, the persecution, and the fragmentation of the world are not an endless cycle. They are a purposeful progression towards a climax. The oath assures the reader that God's timeline is precise and the end of the struggle is not just inevitable, it is already secured by the word of the Eternal One. The refining process, verses 8 to 10. The humility of the seeker, verse 8. I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, My Lord, what will be the outcome of all this be? Daniel's admission of ignorance serves as a profound model of faithful engagement with divine revelation. Despite his long history of receiving visions and interpreting dreams, he remains transparent about his limitations. By confessing that he heard but did not understand, he rejects the urge to speculate or manufacture meaning, choosing instead the path of authentic inquiry. His question, what will be the outcome of all this be, shifts the focus from the complex, often overwhelming details of the prophetic imagery to the ultimate purpose of God's plan. This moment underscores that true wisdom often begins with the honest acknowledgement of one's own confusion, leading the seeker to direct the question towards the only source of clarity and sovereign assurance. Sealed until the time of the end. The preservation of the prophetic secret. Verse 9. He replied, Go your way, Daniel, before the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. In this response, the divine messenger shifts Daniel's focus from the burden of immediate comprehension to the posture of patient stewardship. By instructing Daniel to go your way, the Bible affirms that his primary duty is to live out his remaining days faithfully rather than obsessing over the mechanics of an unrevealed future. The act of sealing the vision serves two purposes. 1. It protects the integrity of the message from premature or misguided human interpretation, thereby ensuring that the prophecy remains a living, relevant hope for those who are destined to live through the time of the end. 2. It emphasizes that God's revelation is not always meant for immediate gratification. Some truths are reserved for their appointed moment in history, requiring the faithful to trust in God's perfect timing rather than demanding full disclosure in the present. The bifurcation of character. Verse 10. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. The time of the end acts as a refiner's fire, separating the righteous from the wicked. For the faithful and the wise, adversity burns away the dross of worldly attachment to reveal their authentic character, making suffering a transformative process that purifies the heart. In contrast, this same pressure has a hardening effect on the wicked, whose persistent rebellion leaves them spiritually blind. Ultimately, this process teaches that true wisdom is not just intellectual, it's a result of a heart aligned with God, allowing the wise to see the divine truth while the wicked remain in the dark. The cleansing of the sanctuary. Verses 11-12. The calculation of divine duration. Verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1290 days. In these verses, Daniel encounters specific time frames that reveal God's control over history. Just as a builder uses a measuring line to ensure precision, God uses these exact numbers to show that the time of testing is limited and strictly finite, not an endless descent into chaos. By marking the time from when the daily worship is abolished to when the abomination that causes desolation is set up, the prophecy shows that even acts of human rebellion happen within God's timeline. The 1290 days include an extra 30 days added to the original 1260 days, which is a core period of 3.5 years of intense trial. This additional month signifies a period of final cleansing or waiting that follows the end of the main struggle. This assurance to the faithful turns the time of deep suffering into a message of hope, confirming that the struggle has a set beginning and a definitive end. The blessed wait, the reward of patient endurance. Verse 12. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1335 days. This verse introduces a final, longer duration that extends beyond the previous counts, offering a profound promise to those who remain faithful. If the 1290 days marks the period of cleansing and judgment, the 1335 days signify the arrival of divine rest and restoration, that is, the full establishment of God's kingdom. As a blessed number, the addition of 45 days to the 1290 suggests a season of transition. It represents a time when judgment is finalized and the kingdom of God is fully established. This extension rewards those who endure the trial to the very end, showing that reaching God's kingdom is not just about surviving the struggle, but about holding on to your hope and integrity through a long wait. Ultimately, this verse is a final encouragement that those who steadfastly endure the entire wait will be rewarded by witnessing the glorious victory of God's plan. The final promise to the faithful. Verse 13. As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. This closing instruction serves as a profound benediction for Daniel's long life of service and faithful witness. Daniel is told to go his way, that is, to continue living faithfully in his current circumstances, signifying that his life's work is complete and his reward is secure. In fact, Daniel is the only prophet specifically told to go his way and rest until the end, marking a unique seal upon his mission. The promise of rest is followed by a certainty of the final resurrection, shifting the focus from the turmoil of history to the hope of the age to come. Daniel's allotted inheritance is the ultimate hope for every believer, which is a promise to stand in one's place before God in the eternal kingdom. It's a final, tender reminder that no matter how chaotic the days of history may appear, the final word for those who remain faithful to God is not the end, but a transition to peace, life, and an everlasting belonging. Conclusion. Daniel 12 transforms the terrifying uncertainty of the end times into a settled promise of divine victory. Even when your own days seem overwhelmed by chaos, remember that you are held by the same sovereign who dictates the beginning and the end. Stand firm in your faith, for your life's work is recorded, your rest is guaranteed, and your eternal inheritance is already secured.